One thing women notice as we enter middle age is the mood swings. And even though we're growing in wisdom, a lot of us don't feel like we're responding better to these stressors. In fact, a lot of us feel like it's getting worse. We respond to stressful situations differently than we used to. So what are some specific steps you can take the next time you feel those emotions starting to rise? Now, when I say that our hormone fluctuations are part of what's responsible for this, I'm not saying we don't have control over our emotions anymore. And I'm not saying that we can just blame our hormones and go on. There are a lot of things going on in our bodies, and the hormonal shifts are one of the main drivers that are causing this difference in how we respond to these things. Our estrogen levels fluctuate and drop, and that has a direct effect on some of the neurotransmitters in our brain that affect our mood and emotions. Progesterone drops too, and progesterone has a bit of a calming effect. And just in general, that fight or flight response becomes more sensitive. So we've got a lot of things going on that are changing what's going on and how we respond to things. Now, if you want to learn more about this, I created a free ebook, and I'll put the link in the description below. But our nervous system is just going to respond differently to these stressors. And one way I've tried to think of it in order to put it in perspective, let's say someone handed you a box and you just assume this box weighs about 5 pounds. But when they actually hand it to you, it actually weighs 50 pounds. If you're not ready to receive a 50-pound box, when it's placed in your arms, you're going to stagger. You might fall down, you might drop it on your foot and break a toe. A lot of things can go wrong if you're not prepared. And it's the same thing with our bodies. We have all these hormone changes going on. Our nervous system responds differently than it did before. So something that would have been minor, that we would have just kind of rolled our eyes and gone on with, all of a sudden hits us differently.
Maybe something happens at work and you feel that you are continually being taken advantage of or taken for granted. Or maybe your teenager has been insisting for weeks that everything at school is just fine, but you check grades and realize things are not just fine, and they haven't been just fine for quite a long time. Maybe you're scrolling through social media and you see that some friends went out to lunch together or had a party and you were excluded and you feel hurt.
And if we're not prepared for that, when we feel that surge of emotion, sometimes our temper is off and running and our mouths are moving before we've even had a chance to think about it. But if we understand that things are just different, that allows us to take a breath and maybe respond a little better next time. These are all lessons I learned the hard way, and I learned them because I did not do it correctly. So the first thing we need to do is pray. We always need the Holy Spirit's help. And this time of life and these situations are no exception. We always need to pray. Next thing I want you to do is write it down. Write down what's bothering you. Let's just say it's something at work. Maybe you were treated unfairly. Write down the situation. Write down how you feel. Write down why you feel this was unfair. Nobody else has to see it. This is just for you. So you don't have to worry about being eloquent or using clear language. Just get your feelings out on paper. This is going to help you get some clarity on what's really going on. Sometimes when we write things down, things become clear in our minds for the first time. Now, after you've written everything down, as long as no one's in danger or you're not up against a really tight deadline, I want you to make 2 appointments with yourself, and hopefully you'll have at least 24 hours before you do the first one. The first appointment is when you're going to review the situation and make a plan. And the second appointment is when you're going to go to the person that you're upset with. And the reason why I think this is important is because we need to have that promise that we're going to deal with it. I think sometimes, especially if we're used to not confronting people, or if we're used to just stuffing our feelings and ignoring them and going on, a lot of times that surge of adrenaline we get when we're upset can be kind of energizing. And I think there's a part of us that wants to seize on that energy and use that to deal with the situation right now. But that's not wise. So if you make that appointment that you will revisit this and you will talk to this person, it makes it a little easier to put it down for the time being. Now, the next step, as I said, is putting it down, put it aside. And I mean, really put it aside. Don't rehash it to a friend. Don't rehearse what you're going to say when you talk to this person. And the reason why I say that is when you are constantly rehearsing it in your mind and when you're going through it all and preparing your speech for what you're going to say to that person, you are just keeping those emotions all stirred up and you are not going to be able to get peace and calm and clarity. That's part of the reason why you wrote it down. You have all the details there to look at later. So now your job is to try to put it aside. Go for a walk, do something fun. If you have a hobby, pick up your hobby, read a book, watch that show that you've been saving for later. Anything that will get your mind onto something else, and just give yourself some time to let that emotional response calm down. Now, once that time has passed, then and only then, get your notebook and go back and read through the situation and pray about it again. And sometimes after you read through it again, you might look at it and think, this was not worth my anger. You might decide it's just too minor. If that's the case, rip out the notebook pages, shred them, or just keep them in your journal, whatever you want to do. But put it aside, consider the case closed. But let's say you look it over and you realize that this is something that you just can't ignore. Maybe this issue with your teenager really does need to be addressed. Or maybe if it's an issue at work, maybe it's a real instance of injustice. Or maybe the issue is with your spouse, and this is a long-standing problem, and for the good of your relationship, you need to talk it over. But the good news is now that you've separated yourself from that initial emotional response, hopefully now you can think through it calmly and come up with real talking points, real issues that you need to discuss. For instance, if it's an issue at work, maybe you can go to your boss and say, I really wanted that project and I got passed over and I feel like I'm getting passed over a lot. Is there something that I need to be doing to be considered for future projects? Or if it's an issue with your teenager, maybe you could say, we've talked about studying and we've talked about you planning ahead and you're not doing it. What steps do we need to take to get this grade up and not have this happen in the future? All of these ways are solid steps you can take to get to the root of the problem, and it's so much more effective than losing your temper and then being embarrassed or upset or escalating the situation more than it needs to be escalated. You can go into it with a calm mind and start coming up with solutions and a way forward instead of just reacting in anger. And then after all that is done, revisit the issue again. And you can just ask yourself, is this just an isolated incident? Is your teenager just a teenager and sometimes teenagers don't study? Or is this a long-standing issue that you maybe should have dealt with a long time ago? Have you never really had good rules in place for your teenager and maybe you need to get some? Do you have a habit of avoiding hard conversations? And is that what's leading to these issues that keep cropping up at work or in your relationships with your friend or with your spouse? Getting upset is not fun and mood swings are not fun, but this is one of the gifts of middle age. We are older and wiser, and so we have learned by now that when you do the same things over and over again, you get the same results. Now we're ready to get different results. Now we're ready to be wise instead of just reacting to everything that's going on around us. These are all lessons I learned the hard way. I was very guilty of letting things slide, not making a fuss, and telling myself it doesn't really matter, it'll all blow over. But by doing that, I wasn't being kind to myself and I wasn't being kind to the people around me. I had to learn some hard lessons in order to realize that this is actually the better way to handle things. And again, if you'd like to read more about what's going on in our bodies, don't forget about my ebook that I have linked in the description. And if you're interested in more videos like this, subscribe or like it. It helps other women find my channel. But I'd also like to hear from you. Do you think middle age is a gift? And what lessons have you learned about how to handle conflict in your relationships? I'd love to hear it in the comments. And stay here to watch my next video where I talk about why you might not be sleeping and how you can fix it.